Video. Wow. Good. Um, Morning, everyone. Call the meeting to order. And let the minutes show that we have a quorum of 3. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands of the First Nations and has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. In particular, I acknowledge the history, spirituality, and culture of the territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the People's Creek Fires, known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, known collectively as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this area, as well as the contributions of the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples whose ancestors shared these lands and waters. May we live with each other's respect and on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. Rich. Prior to today's meeting, the board met in closed session to review and discuss matters that their opinion fell under section 48, item 2D, and item 6 of the Community Safety and Policing Act, and section 25, item B of the Onson Police Services Board General Policy 003, Board of Governance, to consider items such as matters regarding staffing, board training, and labor relations. Moving on to item number 3, approval of the agenda. And I think there's just 2 changes that I have under new business. The 17B says fee schedule bylaw. We didn't get a chance to get that in because there was more discussion on it, so we took it out. We don't want to talk some more with the chief on that and with Dave. And so that will be on the agenda for next month. And also we'd like to add item H, compliance, we're not continue business. So if I get a motion to approve the agenda with those amendments, thank you.
Excuse me, Chair. Is there the option to add one more item to the agenda?
Sure, absolutely.
And I wanted to add, I'm not seeing it in the listing, the option of advocacy to the provincial government to establish provincial regulation and standards for the ride sharing services so that irrespective of the size of a municipality, all residents can be protected. So this is about the issue about ride sharing being wanting to be contracted through the province so that they don't negotiate specific contracts.
Okay.
If we could add whether the board would consider a letter of advocacy for provincial regulations and standards around ride share, please.
We'll approve that. Inclusion.
Okay. All right, good. I'll just put it down as that item is a ride sharing eventually. Any other items that anyone would like to add to the agenda? And second, or we didn't get a second, it's Carol, okay. All in favor? Carrie? Declaration of conflict of interest arising out of the minutes and matters listed on the agenda. Hearing none. Under item number 5, presentations, deputations, and public questions. Item A was a promotion, acknowledged the promotion of Mike Halavetti to sergeant. Since we promoted him, we sent him on more courses as sergeant, so he'll probably be here next month rather, sorry. The next item on the agenda is item B, the 2026 budget influencing factors. And I think Mark's will give a little presentation on that.
Thank you, Chair.
So maybe I'll just make a few comments, but I was getting ready here. So yeah, this has been put together, just outline some of the things, some of the. I'm not using it.
But good thing.
Some of the changes and some of the factors that are influencing some of the costs associated with our 2026 budget and any proposed increases. And I think it's important that members of the public get an opportunity to see some of this information and bring it forward so that it can be discussed. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for welcoming me here today. As the chief said, this information was put together in a slide deck to really provide some context and to tell the story behind some of the growing demands on the scene. Sound a lot of different both internal and external factors that are influencing the budget increase this year. It is quite a lengthy slide, so I'll try to keep it very high level, and as the board mentioned, this will all be available in the public package for anyone that may want to look at it in greater detail. So there's the presentation includes these kind of 8 areas, factors that are all the different factors that are at play. Looking at the modernizing of policing in Ontario, it really is the new Community Safety and Policing Act, which is bringing into a whole bunch of new mandatory requirements. It is one of the most significant changes that we've seen in policing over the last 30 years. There's a new IOP, or Inspectorate of Policing. That's a new oversight body. Lots of new supporting regulations and legislation. And a bunch of examples here about some of the changes that have come into play based on the new CSPA. One example is just new safety equipment uniforms that are going to be required, and new mandatory mental health training. And just to give you an idea of what just that mental health training is, it's a requirement for 4 hours of virtual reality scenario training and 5 hours of scenario training for each officer. That must be implemented next year, building it into our existing block training schedule. And then it's another type of training that will require annual requalification. So just that volume of training is significant of itself.
Well, let's comment that to purchase the virtual reality training equipment was, over $80,000 and for our service, and there are options of providing this training without that, but obviously everything comes with a cost. So it's not just the hours that the officers are taking out from working and having to cover those absences to do those 9 hours of training, but it's also the cost of the equipment and the cost of the courses.
Cost of providing court security is also, as you know, something that falls to the Owen Sound Police Service. Court security demands have increased significantly over the years. And another example of an external factor that we really have no control over is some new mandatory requirement to have an officer or a member with a use of force in the courthouse at all times. And that was something new. So now our part-time officers that are meant to support frontline staff during the day are now being diverted into the and changing the availability of part-time officers for increased police visibility in our downtown core. Just looking at the demand or the demographics of Owen Sound, there has been not a lot of population change over the years. There's some new recent developments that are going to change that quicker. Some of this information is right from the city site. We're looking at population projections over the next 10 years of additional 2,000 persons. So not a whole lot of change in compared to some of the other areas that are growing more frequently. But when we look at per capita crime rates and things like that, just keep that in mind, because this population base impacts a lot of the stats that you'll see later in this presentation. What we do know about the population of Owen Sound is that it does change significantly during the day. Some of this again is also right from the city of Owen Sound site, that there is an increased population that comes into Owen Sound during the day. So unlike a lot of police services where the demands ramp up on Friday and Saturday nights, we see that increased demand in Owen Sound during the daytime on Monday, Friday, where people are coming in for school, shopping, medical services, all kinds of different services and activities that are in Owen Sound that access the hub for the surrounding rural. So it is estimated that within a 30-minute trade area, the population that's around 22,000 is up closer to 53,000. And again, a lot of students, as an example, there's over 2,500 students that are bused into Owen Sound during the daytime. Some of these indicators are social determinants of health. Again, right from the Grey Bruce Public Health site, we see that the income in Owen Sound is a little slightly lower compared to other areas around the Grey Bruce area. Labor force who are unemployed a little bit higher. and also a lower education rate. So just all these different indicators just reflect some of the social demographics of the population in Owen Sound. And we know that insecure housing, mental illness, and addictions are drivers of increasing demand on police service. We also can see here in the graph that a large portion of Grey County's affordable housing locations are in Owen Sound. So again, this is just kind of trying to show the characteristics of the city here and how some of those demographics impact the demand on police services. So we do know, looking at our call rates, that the highest demand for police calls is during the day, Monday to Friday, and that this graph just kind of represents that. We also know that the demand increases in the warmer summer months, when there's also a lot of tourists and seasonal activities that also add to the demands on policing. So this graph is showing the increased dispatch calls for service over the years. It continues to rise. A lot of these graphs that are you can see a dip during COVID, and then the last 3 years, a slow increase each year. There's lots of changes in the demands for each different type of call for service. And one call that we just wanted to highlight as an example is a sudden death call. So this is a generally non-criminal call type that the police are required to attend. It used to take an average just over 2 hours, and with some new changes in legislation and regulations, it's now taking an average of 4.5 hours because of restrictions on who can provide body removal services. So just one example of a call type and the change in complexity. Mental health, mental illness calls, they do consume a lot of police resources, not necessarily criminal in nature. We have got a very robust mental health crisis response team and are working with CMHA crisis workers now riding along. Over the years, we can see, however, even with these resources and this new approach, the mental health calls and the attempt suicide calls continue to increase. There's a lot of time spent on those calls. Some of those calls end up with a mental health apprehension. Our officers are legislated to remain with that person until the hospital takes over. And the waiting time for our officers, we have been tracking it. It is up again last year, up to just under 2 hours. And over the period of month, an average is our officers are at the hospital waiting about 19 hours every month total. So that's more than almost 2 full 12-hour shifts.
And that could be 2 officers waiting.
Yes, yeah. So again, as mentioned, we have increased complexity in calls, but we also are seeing increased crime volume and the severity in the crime in Owen Sound. So the next few slides here go through the uniform crime report, the official crimes that are reported to Stats Canada. Keep in mind that these are just criminal offenses, violations, the most serious violation in any incident, and it does not include any of those non-criminal issues that the police are involved in, or proactive initiatives as well. So I know many of you have seen these slides already, so I'll just go briefly through that. We have seen an increase. These graphs are looking at other smaller municipal police services that serve populations under 120,000. They're grouped with the Thunder Bay at the left, serving the highest population, close to 120, down to the smallest that are in Deep River. So Owen Sound is highlighted kind of in the middle. So the point of these is to compare ourselves with other similar sized municipal police services. It's not always applicable when we look at what Toronto Police Services is doing. So that's what these comparators are meant for here. So we know in 2023, our crime severity index jumped with 3 homicides in the city. It went down last year in 2024, but you can see at 102, it's still significantly higher than the average of these other municipal police services serving similar sized populations. Same with the violent crime index. It did go down from the high in 2023, but still above 100 and significantly above the average and above Ontario as well, and Canada. This is the non-violent. We see the same pattern. It's high compared and above the average. Although it went down slightly from the prior year, although mainly because 2023 was such an anomaly with the homicides in the city. And this graph here shows the historical change in those. The total crime severity index, which is the black line, the violent crime severity, which is the blue line, and the non-violent. Since back in 2017, we have seen that violent crime severity index surpass the total. And again, the peak in 2023, but still remain significantly high in 2024. When we look at weighted clearance rates, they have the same weight as the crime severity. But in this case, we like to see a high percentage. This represents the volume of criminal violations that have been cleared by police. And there's a variety of different ways they can be cleared. But we have been traditionally quite high, and the last 2 years have seen an increase in our clearance rates for total weighted clearance rate, for the violent clearance rate, and the non-violent clearance rate. And you can see here we're almost, compared to these same municipal services, we're at almost the second highest clearance rate, and again has gone up since the prior year again. I think a lot of that is due, we hear our officers saying they know a lot of the regular people in Owen Sound. They get to know them over the years. So anyway, considering the volume that our folks are dealing with, this clearance rate is really quite phenomenal. This graph again is a historical view of the weighted clearance rates. And again, you can see that the last 3 years, there has been a steady increase in all three of these clearance rates. This is the straight count of criminal offenses. Again, we see a dip during COVID, and then the last 3 years in increase each year. We are at the point where over 10 years ago, we're more than double the volume of just straight counts of criminal violation incidents that our officers are dealing with. We are also looking at about twice the number of persons charged than we were 10 years ago. So 276 in 2014, and we're looking at we're estimating 586 based on 3 quarters so far of the year 2025. We know that it's often the same individuals that are charged more than once or at different times throughout the year. We've calculated about 50% of the people charged are repeat offenders. And we had one of our RMS experts query the data and pull out some of our frequent flyers. If we look at our top 10 recontacts of individuals in our records management system, we've got 10 people that account for over 578 calls. So there is a lot of recidivism. Sometimes these individuals are not always the offenders as well, though sometimes they're the victims and the complainants. So this is police contact with a lot of the same people over and over. Crime rate is another way of looking at crime. So that's looking at those total offenses divided by the population per 100,000 persons. So it's kind of it levels out the denominator to make a comparison across different areas that have different populations. When we do that, we can see that Owen Sound is again at the highest per crime rate per capita or per person compared to the others. And last year we were also quite high, and we are again one of the highest compared to these other municipal services.
Right now might be a good time to ask this. When you show these graphs, you got a red line through there, which is the average, right?
Yeah.
So the previous graphs, you're showing the Canadian average.
Well,
So why is that line red and the other ones were same color as Canada-wide?
oh, okay. So what the other ones should be similar. I've got Ontario and Canada in here as benchmarks. I have not included them in the average. This average is just of these municipal services.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you were showing. I thought you were showing the Canadian average.
No,
well,
sorry.
not.
No.
Okay.
It's an average that I calculated just based on these 25 municipal police services.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So you won't find that average in any of the Stats Canada publications at all. They will do averages based on all municipal police. But just for our own purposes, when we're trying to look at comparable police services. Yeah, that's what that average is representing. Okay, and then, so the graph there before was the crime rate per 100,000 in other areas, and then this is the historical crime rate just for Owen Sound. And again, similar pattern, a dip during COVID the last 8 years, or an increase. And again, it's more than double it was than 10 years ago. And this is really, this crime rate is, you can see when the crime goes up over the years, but the population has not changed significantly. That's what's impacting this crime rate. That it really drives it up on a kind of a comparable. Increased complexity of investigations. This is certainly not my area of expertise.
No.
Yeah.
Big comment on that. I mean, all criminal investigations can be out to. And I would say that well over 95% will have some with a electronic. As a result of cell phones and their hands all the time. So none of the cases become simpler to investigate in a lot of respects. You know, there's a lot of things that come on video, so now you have to go and collect video. You have to go and try and determine who's responsible for that video, all those things. So there's the single thing that makes it easier for the officer to prepare the information that then lay a charge.
We also went back in time and just looked at the authorized staffing levels for Owen Sound. It has been unchanged between 2012 and 2024. There was a couple of positions added last year, but when we look at again the criminal code violations per police officer, in the next slide, you can see how that has impacted. Again, it's like that denominator, the population or the staffing that's available for the increased criminal violations. This is again a graph that we created. You won't find this in Stats Canada, but it's taking the total criminal code violations and dividing it by the authorized sworn officer strength. You got a very average indicator number of how many criminal code incidents an officer might carry on average. So last year, Owen Sound was very high and we went up again to 60 on average, 65. And you can look at some of these others. Some of them are, you know, the smaller 14, 20, and we're up at 65. If we look at this graph over a historical time period, this is kind of where we're at as well. Our officers are now carrying more than twice the amount of criminal code cases than they were 10 years ago. Staffing challenges, demographics have really changed over the years. Some of them, just as an example, you can see how hires and departures have increased over the last couple of years. In both sworn and civilian, there's a lot more staff turnover. Officers are moving between agencies more easily and more frequently. There's certainly more of a competitive or strategic need to recruit police officers, as every other police service is looking for qualified candidates as well. There's other things in the workplace like parental leave for both parents, moms and dads that are taking leaves, which creates demands on an organization. And OPC, the police college, has switched to 4 intakes per year versus 3. So there's more demands on individual police services to provide pre and post OPC training that the college may not be doing, as well as ensuring that we have qualified coach officers at the ready for all these new police officers that are cycling. This is kind of, what does all that mean on a day-to-day basis, just to get it, you know, look, what does it look like on a regular day? I don't know, Chief, if you want to take this one.
Yeah, so basically this is just taking the number of officers that we have, the assignments that they're in and showing, you know, the number of officers that we have. So, you know, we're hoping to staff with 4 constables and a sergeant on the road, but oftentimes just due to, shift league factors, courses, other demands, we're sometimes down to 1 and 3 constables. But that's basically what we're operating with and how they're divided up. And we can supplement and augment, so if we need to, we can pull somebody from the detective branch and put them out on the car, or we can, we have the part-time officers, so we can augment the numbers and staff up if there's an event, or if there's something, or if there's, demand for traffic enforcement or something like that, then we augment our numbers with the part-time officers.
Ongoing technological and data demands as well. A lot of technology that drives policing. NG 911 is just one example. We've been finding too, a lot of the software is moving from one-time purchase to annual subscriptions, which,
Yeah, if I can comment on that's a huge driver and a huge cost to in the budget. And I'll take, for example, Microsoft licensing. Before we could do on premises servers and host our own mail functions and all those different things. They quit supporting that because they realized that it's a one-time purchase and you can purchase capital and then continue to run it until it's not supported anymore. And this I use that as an example, but this is across the board now for all the IT and all those types of businesses, where it goes from a one-time capital purchase that you can budget for and plan for and say, okay, well, we need to replace that in 10 years to a no, now you're on a Microsoft 365 platform and everything runs off of that. It's in a subscription based by the number of users that you have in your organization, and there's nothing to it. And now it goes from capital to an operating cost. And that's one example, but everything that we look at is if we want to look at officer efficiencies and data quality, there's a per officer cost. If we want to look at dashboards for monitoring workload and doing all those things, it's a per officer cost. Everything is a subscription based now, and so the capital purchases haven't changed a lot on that end. They've gone down, but everything costs more money, and it's a regular recurring cost for that.
As you know, too, we have the Owen Sound Emergency Communication Center, or dispatch for a whole wide range of different services, including 5 other services. This is a bit of a gem in our organization here, and is able to generate some revenues and offset some of the costs as well of some of that technology. Essential community partnerships are key to policing in every community. We have a bunch of them actively going on. The mental health crisis response team, the core team that does mostly proactive work, our community services officer, as well as our auxiliaries. All of these are proactive in trying to get in front of the issues and work with our partners that have different areas of specialty. One of the other newer ones we have is the bail compliance and warrant apprehension team. This was initiated from some grant funds, so we've got 2 full-time officer positions dedicated to this, as well as part-time civilian support. And their main focus is monitoring and apprehending high-risk repeat offenders that are may be violating their bail or the community conditions. So we have had a lot of success with these proactive positions, and just some of the stats here have just shown some of the increased violations that have been tracked while these officers are in this proactive role, and as well as the number of individuals that are more regularly monitored because of the extra staffing in place.
Could I just ask if you can comment on the county's program on their SOS team that they have and how this is helping, or is it fully running, or?
So they've had the SOS team in operation for a number of years since COVID, when it was started. They provide supports to community members downtown. I believe it's a couple days a week now. They're looking to expand that program with a recent grant to assist with some of the downtown issues and problems. as it stands now, the program that's in place now is a great program, and it assists people who, because they're, they're coming to them, they're taking the services to the individual, so they get those services. So, but that's health, that's, supports, that's, funding and, support in that regard. But it doesn't take away from the work that we do. It doesn't take away, it doesn't change. The individuals are still out on the street, and maybe there's less, maybe there are less issues with somebody with, say, a mental health problem if they're getting a routine talk with somebody else, but it doesn't take away from the calls for service for us. And the expansion of that program, we've reached out to the coordinators to say, what's it look like? What are your plans? What are you planning on doing? We've received no information back, what that looks like. We haven't had a meeting with them to say, what calls for service do you want us to take, and what do you want to take, and what, the problem that with a lot of those programs, and it's been implemented in other jurisdictions, is that they don't know exactly what they're going into until they get there either. And if there's any risk or threat to their safety, they're not going to go. They can walk around downtown and talk to people and offer the supports and things that they need, but if the person's causing an issue or causing a problem or being a nuisance, they're not going to ask them to move. They're going to suggest to them that it shouldn't be where they are, but if they say no, unlike the police, and we can go and speak to the or we have already spoken to the owner of a property for trespass authority. We can say, well, no, you don't say no to us. We do something about that. I'm not sure that that's going to change at all with the implementation of more people downtown. And I think it's a public presence, but I don't know that it's a public safety.
So it's an additional community service.
It's an additional community service, but I don't know that it addresses public safety.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if this is the time to ask questions, but so there's a couple of things that come to my mind. Talking about comparators, using size of police service population. It's not 100% going to reflect the most accurate comparator for Owen Sound. Based on the fact that we are a regional center with a hub of many, many services, our population increases based on students plus tourists. We know how much that is. What is the closest comparator that would be able to accurately match our police services to another municipal police service?
It depends on the degree of accuracy you're looking for. I think
Yeah.
there's so many, like you've already listed, there's so many factors
Variables.
and variables that add up to that.
Yes,
Yeah, I don't think no two communities are like. And,
Right.
and I think the important piece, and I think what we're trying to explain in the graphs is that, okay, you can't compare yourself to Toronto because, you can have 30 homicides in Toronto and their population isn't going to cause a spike because of that. But when you start comparing yourselves to a broad range of communities that are all under 120,000 in population, we can compare ourselves to different areas for different things. People will say, the population of Strathroy is probably Strathroy Caradoc is one that's most similar to yours. So why don't you have the same as Strathroy Caradoc? Well, there are no supports, there are no systems, there's nothing there. It's rural. Everybody leaves and goes to London. Okay, and then you say, well, then on the other side of those graphs, who else is supposed to? Rockville's somewhat similar. They're isolated, they're there, but they don't. It's not the identical either. There's no perfect way of doing it. I think that's the reason we've gone and we've put in as much information as we have in the graph to say, regardless of who you're trying to compare yourself to, and I'll say that Woodstock is probably one of our closest comparators because their number of calls or service,
Yeah.
the number of criminal charges per officer, like the number of criminal charges that they lay in a year, not per officer, because like all those other factors are very similar to ours,
okay.
except our budget is half of theirs and our number of officers are half of theirs. So I think that's why it's important that, and Mark's done a great job putting together all this information to say, there's no actual one area that we can say, this is what we're equal to or how we're equal to it. But when you take the total factors of all of them and you say, this shows that we're very similar to this community, but we're still here. This shows that we do the same workload as this community, but our budget is here and our staffing levels are here. It's the greater picture of the whole thing that you have to take and interpret the information and say, and I'm not sure that you can you know, you can say that the officers aren't busy and the officers aren't overworked, when you look at the. Calls per officer from 2014 and the number of officers to the calls per officer in 2026, 25, 24, sorry. And you look at the criminal charges per officer and the number of people charged and all of those things. You see the workload, you see the demands on our service that are far outpacing all those other services across the board.
And that's the message based on, because we're heading into budget, right? So the message is, these are the changes, the impact on our police services. Often people say, yeah, but look how they're doing it for less money. And that's why I asked the question, because I understand there's no exact match. We can't exactly compare apples to apples, but we can certainly show the trends and we can explain why the rationale is for what's happening here in Onset. That was my first question, Chair, if I may proceed. Second, do we have a line item that clearly points out, or could we obtain the actual information on the cost for providing the service, regulated service we have to at the hospital? Is there an opportunity to have a conversation with the hospital about whether they have avenues to funding or to offset those expenditures? Have we ever packaged per year, on average, what we have to pay to have people off right there at the hospital? Because I think until those conversations get down to that point, it's obviously more than it has been and increasing. Can we obtain that?
Bring his head to the discussion.
Yeah, so I meet regularly, with the new management at the hospital.
Yes,
Previously, there wasn't a whole lot of conversation.
okay,
I have a very good working relationship with the people at Bright Shores. They've done a really good job of sitting down with us and looking at and implementing into place. You know, I can send off an email and I review all the calls from the overnight report.
Mhm.
And if there's an incident where somebody's been at the hospital and a delayed length of time, and that would be higher than our average wait time. Then I can send it off, the people review it there, they have a sort of form that they go through, they do an after incident review of all those incidents, and then they come back to us and say. Okay, this was this was because we had a huge demand, or there were several cardiac incidents, whatever, that there was a medical problem, this is what happened, and this is why you had to wait, or this was an issue, there was a training issue, or this person is fairly new to their position, we've had a speak with them, and they've done a great job, and those were trending down, and now they're starting to, they're in flux, but we don't see. I haven't seen since the summertime, and part of it's probably staffing levels at the hospital as well. I haven't seen in the summertime the huge numbers that we were this past summer, and I think some of it's the programs that we put in place, and some of it's the working with them to eliminate those hires.
so if you never needed to, you could pull that financial data about the hours spent. If there was ever an opportunity for some.
Yeah,
funding
and
relief.
our meetings with them, it's also increased their security levels
Yes.
as a result of that, so
Yeah.
they've made changes to accommodate some of our concerns. And I'm sure it wasn't all addressed to address our concerns, I think it addressed internally, but we were also the voice that resulted in that.
Two other questions. You talked about dispatch. And I think the important, often what's asked of council or at council at different places. Bottom line, what would it cost? If we didn't have a dispatch, what would be the increased cost that we have to, are we allowed to talk about that there? Here?
No, we'll talk about that here. All I'm saying is though, we would still have to have a dispatch.
Yes, yes. But it is a business that generates revenue that offsets from your base budget.
Absolutely.
And that is bonus
And
for providing that service.
if you go back to 1920, no, whenever we first started dispatching
Yeah.
for other places.
Yeah.
I think the whole premise behind that was, regardless of how many people you dispatch for or how many services, you still need
Yeah.
the core group of people, and I think that's 8, is it not? 2 for each shift, and it's 724.
Yeah.
And why they started back then is you had 2 people on a shift for a large portion of it, only dispatching for Onset Police and Fire. Number of hours per shift that they were actually busy was probably pretty small. But what they looked at back then was, how do we utilize this excess capacity? Why don't we try and get some revenue generated to offset our costs. And I think that was the whole premise. And I think it was only one or two back then.
Start smaller.
Yeah. And now we've grown. And we will continue to grow and continue to reduce the cost to the taxpayer of Owen Sound.
And it's significant from what I understand.
Yeah, so, and I think you have to look at it outside of dispatch.
Yeah.
People have their head focused on dispatch for whatever reason, because dispatch is, I would suggest, not even the main revenue generating or cost offsetting factor that we have within the service now. It's everything where we had excess capacity. It's expanded to records. It's expanded to cell block monitoring. It's expanded to IT. It's expanded to NG 911 and dispatch. And when you look at all of those things, so if you take our budget line by line and you say, okay, we're not going to work and provide any services for anybody else. So you strip out all of the revenue that's generated from every other function in the police service. And then you say, what do we need as a police service to cover our own needs? And you put back in all of those civilian positions that are simply to service Owen Sound and to meet the needs of Owen Sound. And that is, as the chair mentioned, 2 dispatchers 24/7 who wouldn't be completely busy. That is a records person at the front desk who wouldn't be completely busy, but needs to be there 24/7, and chances are they'd be busy most of the time, but not all the time. That is somebody back in the cell block monitoring, whether there's a prisoner here or not. If they're not doing any revenue generating, they're gonna be sitting there doing not much of anything for the time they're there. If you take out and put in all those positions back in, it makes about a 2 million, it's just over, and for the 2025 estimate, it was just over $2 million.
So that's the benefit. Ultimately, that's not, the taxpayer is not,
The
that
taxpayer's
takes
not
the,
paying that.
it's relief
Yes.
of that amount, so $2 million by having all of those functionalities. I
And-
think that's significant to know.
Another comment was made, I think we talked about capital, the amount of capital that the city has put into dispatch. I don't think that's a correct comment because we get a lot of the money for capital equipment through.
I can tell you since 2019, there's been zero investment by the city in capital or dispatch. I can tell you that the amount of money, and since 2019, when I got here, the capital provided by the city doesn't cover much of our capital purchases. When you look at it, I think it was highest, it was 160, it's $150,000 per year now. And when you look at the fleet of vehicles outside and the number of vehicles that we have and the number of new vehicles that we purchased, the computers, the laptops, all those other things. There's been a significant cost savings to the city and the taxpayer offset through the work of the organization and the people who work here, and Mark, Dave, people around this table and previous people around this table, and the grants that we've written and the opportunities that we've been successful with.
That's a significant factor when we're heading into budget, because we're in challenging times. There is no debt, so it's important to make that. That's fine. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
I'm okay.
Okay,
So Mark,
no, that's okay, it's all a great conversation, and we're getting near the end, so I'd scoot through here, so I did want to acknowledge that policing is always in partnership with other community service providers, it's essential. Those partnerships require trusting and long-term relationships with, which also requires time, so some of those proactive positions, outreach in the community, even just for an example, we are part of the situation table through the community safety and well-being plan at Grey Bruce. It's 1 hour of an officer's time every week staying in that situation table. So it's essential, but it does require resources. Again, Chief just mentioned this too, that the limited budget increases over the years, specifically even the capital budget, it had remained at 150,000. We have been quite successful in some grants lately that have covered a lot of these things like vehicles and software and hardware as well, so. Last 3 years of overtime, we have seen increases, and some of that is reflective of the growing demand and the staffing levels that have remained. And some of these issues that we are seeing here, the external factors influencing the budget are not unique. to the City of Sound, you can see budget increases in many other municipal police services that across Ontario that are dealing with a lot of the same external factors that we are here. And you mentioned comparators, so I don't know, Dave, if you want to speak to this graph, this is.
I'd love to, because the chief ran out of time, presented the last time, we had to skip over this one fairly quickly, but just as a comparator, we've pulled up Woodstock and didn't pick Woodstock out of the blue. We know that because we talked earlier that our population is somewhere in the 50,000 daytime. Woodstock, it's simply a matter of looking up, other Ontario cities that have a similar population. So here's Woodstock. Our sign says 22,456. Woodstock's population's closer to 50,000. The next one is the number of officers. We have 41 officers and 37 civilians. Woodstock has 96 and 45. There's your crime severity indexes, all of those charts that you've seen before. We're running 101.9. Woodstock is 68, much lower crime level. Violent crime severity index, less than half. Total weighted clearance rate, that is our efficiency rating. What do we solve here? Pretty much double. Chance of the crime being solved in Owen Sound is probably twice as great as it is in Woodstock. There's your total crime rate per 100,000 persons that Mark talked about earlier. Again, more than double what Woodstock's is. Total criminal code violations per officer. This is the workload issue. This is how many criminal cases in a year is an officer being tasked with, more than double here in Owen Sound over Woodstock. Administration of justice violations. That's your recidivism, your breaches on release terms and that sort of thing. What is that? 3 times what Woodstock has. Again, speaks to our crime rates and our demographics that we have here. The next one simply is traffic and drug violations. Those ones I sometimes flag because those are the ones that are officer workload generated. In other words, when you have an officer who has some spare time, more often than not, they have time to work on the traffic and drug stuff, which doesn't always come in as a complaint to us. It's sometimes just self-generated work. So our numbers are down in that over Woodstock, but that speaks to the call volume and workload. Number of persons charged in 2024. That's by your whole service. Again, we're almost double. So twice the workload of Woodstock with 50,000 people. And the big ones here, call for service. We are only about 10% behind the Woodstock number of calls for service. You can see the numbers there. And the big one that should jump off the page at you is the very last one. There's your budget comparison. So Woodstock sits at about $21 million a year for their annual policing budget. So I call that a tale of two cities. It's not the Charles Dickens version, but I think it speaks volumes. We could prepare a slide for this on Stratford, on any of the others. I think you're going to see they all look very similar. But this more than anything else sort of condenses all of that information you see in the presentation to say, there's a great summary for you. Your average 50,000 person population city here in Ontario, and there's the stats. They're not skewed, they're straight out of the Stats Canada information that Mark pulls. So there you have it.
So Chief, when someone asks you the question, do you have any proof of the number of calls when our population doubles, that our calls actually go up? It's the Woodstock comparison that answers that question. I mean, you should know automatically that because of the number of calls you get to the office. But I think that proves it. That might have been asked the other day.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that yes, the population on the sign says this, but when you concentrate services, when you concentrate everything into a smaller community within a larger area, that reflects on the workload of the police. And I know that when we're coming into budget time and we're talking about that, public safety isn't economical. It's not cheap, but it's the most important thing a city can have. Is safety for their community and safety for their citizens and safety, the best feeling of safety to leave their homes. And when you look at the crime rates, and you look at the number of officers and you start looking at all those things. That's where you start looking at it and saying, well, obviously, you know, a police presence, it's up to council, it's up to the board, but. There's not been a big police presence within the city. It's been limited, and as you can see. Stockton's a much larger police presence with 96 officers than 41 and handling the same amount of workload. But, you know, the traffic, the drugs, they have time to do those things. Don't have the time necessarily to do those things. And as such, the crime rates, violent crime rate, all those other things are likely to suffer.
Two things. I appreciate that you have used the 25 comparators to be able to catch all the variables compared to Owen Sound. The other thing is, as you increase the officers or capacity here, you're certainly soon going to outgrow this building, or probably already have, as well as the required maintenance on this building that's not being looked at.
Yeah, absolutely.
comment.
That's a very fair comment, and you know. Yes, we will outgrow the capacity of this building at some point. We were making do as you know, we promoted a second inspector, and there's no door on the office yet, but it's coming. But yes, that's a very fair comment, and you know, and as we start to do some catch up on some of the things, and everybody knows, couldn't see out the front windows, they were so filthy. And so they started washing the windows, and they had to stop because the water was pouring in the back of the windows, because and so they had to stop, and now they're doing remediation work on the caulking around all the windows. Well, when there's frost on the inside of the windows, we knew there was problems with the caulking. But now I don't know what the cost of that remediation work is, but that's significant, and it's taking away from the investment in fixing the actual problem.
The Band-Aid solution.
Exactly.
I wanted to go back to your comment about safety in the community. It's not just police services saying safety is important, because that's where you come from, right? But we have heard many of our residents through engagement, through the Vision 2050. It is right up top. So by you saying that, and by us listening to our community, we're actually aligning as we move forward. And I think it's really important that we recognize we're hearing from our community. And we're also, from your stats, seeing that police services has basically absorbed to be efficient, effective, and actually significantly comparable to others with some challenges and resources. So I think that too is an important statement. I want to go back to Marion's comment. So when do we begin conversations about a facility? Like, when is the time to start the conversations?
Do that
Right
next.
now. Well, I think it's important, Marion, you raised a really important point. You know, this takes planning, it needs justification. We know there's not the parking, that even as a policing, community policing facility that we don't have. But when is the time? And how do we start to have those conversations? Because we've just seen the stats on where we are with activity, and we're gonna grow. So that's a question, actually.
Yeah, no, and I wasn't kidding. We had been thinking about, but how we approach a new building, like, what do we do? Do we form a committee that looks at it? Do we do it by the whole committee of the board? It's a large board. 4 people, but it just, there's 3 people. It's something we should do right now.
Yes.
Brian, did you know? I thought you, because you had advocated for starting that soon.
Yeah, it's long overdue, I
Yeah.
think.
I think the board, and just from my perspective, the board started that conversation probably around the same time I arrived by asking, and previous members, Member Sampson was very aware of that circumstance. And started the conversations and saying, well, there's all these things that aren't there. When is it smart to move in a different direction than just trying to figure out when are you going to get to it? And that was the purpose of pushing the board, pushing for the building, the building assessment back in 2020. Is that 2020 or 2021? I know I came in on a Sunday for.
Yeah,
A few years ago, yeah.
But I came in on a Sunday because it was imperative to get it done, and it's been 3 or 4 years now. And I think the push is from the board has recognized this. I don't think there's been anywhere that it's gone from here, but yeah, it needs to be a point of discussion.
I don't know what they're spending on the fire hall for renovations, but it should be in emergency services building.
And has
Stay
it,
there.
so are you talking about a joint? Like, have we ever considered the option of a combined?
I think we haven't considered actually getting into the nuts and bolts of a police station, much less whether it's shared facilities with police, fire, ambulance, I don't know. The other thing, it's been long stipulated that the police service station has to be downtown. I disagree. Police officers have to be downtown. But the building can be within the city limits someplace.
And then stay a virtual activity. So I look to Marion, you've had experience with building groups, and I don't want us to lose this at this point. I mean,
Why don't we,
get to the nuts and bolts.
yeah, why don't we put it on the agenda for next meeting, for November? And we'll have a roundtable discussion on where we should go and what the tactics, strategy would be to look at a new building facility or a different facility. Maybe that's another comment.
I have a meeting on Friday,
I know.
and I know you received an invitation, you're unavailable, maybe it's best if somebody else from the board.
I had that on my calendar.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't know if we were all invited or.
Then I got it wasn't.
Right.
Yeah. So
No, you got it because you're on council and you got it
Oh.
because you're on council. And today, later on, I was gonna ask Brian if you wanted to attend that meeting, because I can't make it.
I would go.
Chief, do you know
Well,
if that deficiency study was ever shared with the board back a few years ago? The one that the Sunday one that had that really big number on it.
Yes,
Yes.
was shared with the board and the city.
All I can say is it's such a long road to reach that end mark where something is actually done that the sooner you start, the better.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, we'll put that on the agenda for the November meeting and move forward with it.
If I,
Sorry to interrupt your presentation. All of this.
Pretty much done
I
anyway.
think that was the last.
Yeah, there's a,
I know one thing that Mark passed over quickly when we talked about the population growth. I'm not sure whether that 2036 figure came from the extra 2,000 people, but I can tell you just between BCK and RCA, the two developments that are going in now, there's your 2,000 people that could potentially be here by the end of next year. It's not 2036, and that's a 10% population increase, which comes with, some extra demands that we're going to have, and we don't staff immediately. Takes us a year to get ahead, so that's something to be thinking about as well. As
Well, I wonder too, there's development that's happened and people are already in those developments, such as behind. So Chalet and up in that area, that I'm sure has not been accounted for. And there's a lot of population that with, even on 9th Avenue with a couple of condo developments and things that have taken place.
yeah, I think the
Not being
RCA
suitability.
or the BCK estimate was 500 to 600, and I think
Yeah.
RCA when complete is 14 to 1,500 to 700 and something
Yeah.
units. So that's a big, and that doesn't count all of the smaller ones that are going on as well. So I think we're going up a lot faster than what's been predicted there. So.
Okay, good.
Chair, I had one quick question.
Yes.
For Margaret. Early on, you're talking about court security and regulations. I guess they're not regulations, they're recommendations.
Yeah, so their recommendations, and I think Mark said it was, mandated, but there are recommendations that have come out through the Ontario Superior Court of Justice and the Ontario Court of Justice through the Ministry of the Solicitor General passed along, outlining some new recommended levels of court security and procedures. They haven't been mandated, they haven't been put into legislation, but that will significantly change the demands for our presence in the court at the uniform officer.
So Margaret said use of force. Is it It's actually armed officers though, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
yes,
That's what I want.
yeah,
Apologies,
yeah,
yeah.
it is.
We're special constables right now, but we're gonna have to use armed officers.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe just to put Hank on the spot, sorry about that. Have you heard anything definitive as to they need armed guards on, or armed officers on each floor, or?
That's since the last meeting we discussed it briefly as well,
Yeah.
there was officers, per floor, I believe is what they said. The recommendation, I think chief
Yeah.
presented was one officer per building. I've heard nothing from the ministry in regards to that further though, other than feedback from different boards being problematic to meet some of these.
Hearing.
Are there discussions with the provincial court on their requirements as well?
Yes, I have meetings, I've had a brief discussion with the court facility coordinator as well as the provincial court. Judge here, Ontario Court of Justice, justice here, and the head justice of the peace for the area. The Superior Court justice wasn't available, so we're rescheduling that meeting, but we are having.
Okay, thank you, Mark, appreciate it, well done.
I think maybe just needs the amount of work that goes into one of those.
Oh, yeah.
It's massive. When you're looking at all the comparators to 20 other police services and to be able to put it into something that's digestible and easy to read there. Thank you, Mark. It just speaks to your skill set, but
I
there's
think
not a lot of other police services that are seeing that kind of stuff. Hank will tell you that there's.
Last one I saw was Peel Region, far bigger service than it sounds, very comparable though.
Right.
I just want to say I appreciate that that has been shared with council. And also appreciate that the public is getting a view of this as well. So I think that's important.
And this is the version that was sent out with the package. Is that the latest version of that slide deck? Do you
I
know?
don't think it did.
No.
It didn't,
Oh, okay.
it didn't have that last page, but
You will send
the
it.
comparison.
Thanks. I'll leave you through that.
All right,
Thank you very
good.
much.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to item number 6, confirmation of the minutes of public session held on September 24th. Can I have someone make that motion?
So move.
All right, thank you. Seconder? Carol, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Any business arising out of the public session minutes of September 24th? None? Correspondence received. I don't have any correspondence for this meeting in open. And well, if was anything that came in the last. No. Okay. Just briefly on chairman's reports. It's the last meeting I had an opportunity to attend the swearing in ceremony for Constable Harcott and Constable Reed. October 1st, I attended the OSPSB directors meeting. On October 7th, members Kepke and O'Leary, Chief Ambrose and Deputy Chief Bishop, we attended the OSPSB Zone 5 meeting in Guelph. October 20th, and actually there's a slide deck that came out of the presentation was there, and I was able to get a copy of that, so I will be sharing that with the rest of the board, probably go over that at our next meeting. So it's things that they do with the crowns now to get a better conviction rate or a straight, whatever you want to call it. Moving on, October 23rd, we attended the OSPSB strategic planning meeting and the 2026-2029 strategic plan was completed and should be sent out to the entire OSPS board for final review and approval. And the priorities in the 2026-29 include the education, advocacy, and expertise. Other questions? I'll move governance. I don't have anything under governance for this open meeting. Hank, do you have anything? Moving on to September monthly reports, and we'll start off with the criminal investigations branch, drug enforcement, intelligence unit.
Okay. So in several of the previous meetings, we've talked about 3 homicides from 2023. I can provide some updates with those. First homicide that occurred primary offender has been sentenced, convicted and sentenced to custody. The only fallout from that homicide remains is a additional count of perjury, which was laid as a result of some false testimony, allegedly, during a bail hearing. That trial is set to occur in February. The second homicide, this will be the last time that it'll be reported on, as both offenders have pled guilty and been sentenced to custody. The last one was the youth involved. So that matter has been concluded, pending any appeal. It's not expected. The third homicide, the Curry House homicide, it's been much reported in the media recently that the three alleged offenders have waived their conviction from hearings and have consented to be returned to face. So procedural matters to attend to before we need to have them returned. We'll report on that at the next meeting as well. Some other noteworthy investigations coming out of the criminal investigations branch involves sexual assault, which has been ongoing for a few months. This is an interesting matter because it highlights sort of like a psychoanalysis situation that we all are aware of, wherein an offender was charges were laid against an offender, and as it turned out, the investigation revealed that that offender was also victimized in a sexual assault as well. So that matter is now being investigated, stemming off of that same case. Also of note, the service received some threatening messages through a compromised email and Instagram account. Some messages were sent not only to us, but also to the Mawikadong Indigenous Center. So that involved an investigation in identifying who the person was that compromised the email. Charges have been laid in that case. The party was identified. And the other highlighted case is some investigators from the criminal investigations are conducting a child victim, an interview of a child victim, which was beyond the capacity of the members of the uniform branch. There's some statistics included for MHART. We had 3 officer referrals for MHART cases, and there was 25 occurrences in which MHART responded to out on the road. And there was some proactive engagement activity. Some officers did some training, which is actually captured in another training report, which will be upcoming. Regular meetings, including the situation table, MERIM, 365 training, as well as some auxiliary meetings. In terms of drug overdoses, we're currently on pace to see a notable decrease in drug overdose deaths in the city. So yeah, clear positive. Yeah, went through a period of time for several years where they seem to be climbing, but now they seem to be decreasing, which is a good sign. Currently have no outstanding missing persons on record. That is that report. The next one is the auxiliary report. As was just mentioned, we just graduated a class of 7 auxiliary members. However, in September, that unit contributed 153 hours of volunteer time to the service in the community. Highlights were a recruiting night, as well as some training in suicidal persons, which was delivered by the detective sergeant. And they're planning to run a food drive in the fall to benefit and to assist the Salvation Army. That is the auxiliary report.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can I just ask currently how many auxiliary members you have?
19.
19, and that includes the 7 new ones?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to sit around 18. We added 7 that brought us to 19. But some are more active than others.
Thank you.
It's like community response. Yep. So the community-oriented response unit contributed 20 hours of foot and bike patrol combined in the River District, as well as with a focus specific to September and back to school enforcement and monitoring. They also were required to cover some shortages in staffing, and engaged in one criminal code investigation involving a stolen wallet and subsequent use of stolen credit cards. Laid a few charges in that. They also did some training and participated in safe drug awareness programs. They also-
Sorry, Craig, you just talked about 12.5 hours of foot patrol.
Yes,
Now, is that in the river district itself?
primarily, yes. There's some offset with being around the schools, as I mentioned, but
Yeah.
primarily their focused area is the river district.
And that would be like one walkthrough or a number of walkthroughs,
Um,
zigzag or?
Yeah, spaced across different days.
Yeah, okay.
And then there's also the additional 7.5 hours of bike patrol that they did.
Right, yeah.
That's also primarily river district time.
Yeah, okay, good, thank you.
Welcome.
I went too far, sorry.
That's okay. So frontline report and collision statistics. Some things to note here. There was a decrease in highway traffic act charges between September and 2025 relative to 2024. Approximately 30 less charges, also less cautions. You can see, however, there was a corresponding doubling of criminal code charges. About partway down the graph there. That kind of coincides with the presentation you just saw, that the officers are fielding more calls and dealing with more criminal activity. I did look into that a little bit more in depth. Partly to account for that, there was a couple of specific investigations where some people had their identification wallets stolen. And in that type of case, or in this specific cases in September, what had happened was people's various credit cards were stolen. And then the offender proceeded to go around and make multiple purchases at different retail outlets, which causes sort of an inflated number of charges, but it's still one incident. So of note, in September, there were two double-digit charges occurrences, which account for some of that increase. And then the other one that really sticks off the page, and it goes along with the conversation that was just had, was if you look to the right-hand side of the graph, the traffic and part-time officers, you can see that their traffic charges month over month dropped 29 to 7, and dropped cautions from 71 to 27. And that goes in hand with the conversation we just had about court security time. You can see that they were in September of 2024, they were required to provide 0 hours of court security time, armed security. And in September, now they're being diverted to the tune of 202 hours per month, which is time not spent in the river district.
So that takes away from traffic.
That's your
And
proactive.
proactive foot patrol and patrol. Yeah. So that kind of really jumps off the page there of the impact that armed security requirement causes to our service. Ride statistics, 27 officers were involved in ride programs for a total of 10 hours spent. There were 231 drivers checked and 1 roadside test administered. There was an arrest made at a ride program, however, it was for an outstanding warrant rather than an impaired driving situation. Aside from ride, there were 2 impaired drivers charged in September. Moving down to collision statistics, nothing particularly noteworthy here. They're all the numbers are fairly in line, month over month, and then year over year, September 2024 versus 2025. The report from the community services officer speaks about some of the training and the social media activities that have been engaged in. There's been some fraud prevention posts and the introduction of motions within the service, some highlights of foot patrol and vehicle theft investigations. Some of the community engagement work returns with the return to school involvement. So there's some education programs ongoing that are typically year-over-year things. Youth and policing is resuming as was an activity work as well. One, also they started resuming lockdown drills, which may be of interest in schools. So the community service officer will be cycling through all the schools doing this. The next one is lost hours, which I can do. There's a graph there on sick time. You can see a fairly notable decrease in sick time from August to September, which is encouraging. Over 150 hours less sick time in September. to August. Else fairly. Complimentary. Those are the ones that.
Thank you, Inspector.
We missed BCWA.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I.
Does that fall to the top?
There it is.
Great. So the BCWA officer contributed 5 hours of foot patrol and laid 31 criminal charges. As well as apprehended 5 outstanding persons on arrest warrants. Also part of their duties is trying to increase presence in the river district through foot and bike patrols. So there were 5 hours contributed in that regard. Part of BCWA also, they were pulled at times to supplement resources for patrol members and patrol platoons. So that detracts from some of their abilities. However, it wasn't excessive in September. Did a little bit of training and assisted with some search warrants as well with the crime unit.
any questions for the inspector on any of those reports? Moving on to reports from Director of Civilian Services. Would be the file records.
All right, thank you, Chair. So just some highlights from this report, prepared by Krista Plenty. We did have a slight decrease in bulk record check searches for the month. We determined that's attributed to our third-party vendors not submitting for that month for other reasons associated with their own business. And that we anticipate those numbers are going to increase in the month of October and go back to sort of the normal numbers. This has kind of been spoken to already in during our meeting here, but with the addition of armed officers at the Ontario and Superior Court of Justice, it has put an increased demand on having constables there in attendance, and as a result, it's increased the number of hours that these officers are in attendance by 194. And when you combine that with the hours that the special constables are also putting in, additional 1247. There's definitely an increased demand on hours, and there's going to be an increased demand on associated costs. In addition to that, the Ontario Superior Court of Justice recently appointed a new judge, Scott Cowan, to address the court backlog, which will result in more courts operating more frequently, and as a result, the armed presence as well as special constables there. That increased need for court security again is going to result in some increased costs for us.
Good, thank you. Moving on to the report from the Director of Corporate Services.
So I'll share this information on behalf of Wendy Pratt. So just some highlights from our recruitment strategies. The police service participated in a fall fair in Owen Sound. It's a good turnout, made some very positive connections with members of the community. We held an information session, Pathways to Policing, for 24 participants, giving an overview of the recruitment process and what's involved. Very engaged group of people, very successful. We've also been involved in recruiting a part-time social media education specialist. Interviews were completed, and as the chief had mentioned earlier, we're successful in hiring a candidate to fulfill that role for us. 3 new recruits are currently down at OPC doing their basic recruit hospital training. As mentioned, 7 new auxiliaries were appointed this past month, and I believe the paperwork's yourself, Chair, for signature. We had one retirement, one of our switchboard operators resigned last month. So we're looking to fill that vacancy. And just from a soft skills development perspective, to create and maintain a inclusive work environment, Wendy Pratt's been looking at some online training for members to enhance skill sets.
Sorry, if I could ask a question. As I look through that training in those categories, is there ever an opportunity for board to participate in any of training modules? And I'm thinking about, the issues around handling conflict when there is conflict in perception and just when people address issues. And also the strengthening of communication skills. I look at those topics and I'm wondering, we obviously have training modules before we can even sit at this table. But whether there's ever consideration, I know it's for the membership, but is there an opportunity as well to? It's virtual training, so even to have module specific where we could maybe listen in.
I guess that's something we could ask Wendy, depending on what level it's being pointed at, yeah. So maybe you could take that back to Wendy and ask her if there's
Please.
an opportunity.
So then we'll
Thank you.
And then we get back to the,
Thank
and
you.
we let you know on that. I know that the OAPSB is coming out with a number of training modules that are available, on different topics. Yeah, I think this
We
director
skipped the.
corporate service institutions.
That would be.
That's okay.
Only that's you, we should say, so.
Yeah, we provide some pilots on behalf of Suzanne Belknap. So from in September data, there was a slight decrease in the number of overall 911 calls from the previous month. And we believe that's just attributed to seasonal trends with folks, visiting the area, and then as things return back to, school, work, that sort of thing, that people have left the area, and that's probably impacted on the number of calls for service. So you'll see that there's a slight reduction there in the month of month. However, if you look at the year by year data, you're seeing that there's still an overall increase in 911 calls coming into the center, up by 5%. So this is sort of in line with what we've been talking about today in terms of trends and how things are continuing to go on the rise, just the demands on the service.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Mary.
What is OSECC?
Town Emergency Communication Center, just that.
So of the 5882 calls, 1592 were dispatched. Just tell me the difference in the numbers.
So I think there's two different charts to look at. One speaks to just the types of different 911 calls that are coming into the center. And then there's another chart that actually speaks to the types of events that are dispatched through the center. So we're specifically where you.
So.
Okay, that was on the chart, so.
I can touch on that. So we're the primary PSAP for Gray County, Bruce County. So we will answer the call. So it comes in as an incoming call. Then it's determined, well, then there's some that are not answered and some that are answered. But then basically when you take those answered calls, the ones that we don't handle ourselves to dispatch. So if it's for the OPP, or if it's for ambulance, or if it's for fire service that we don't dispatch for, then that gets transferred to your secondary PSAP. And then anything that we handle ourselves. So of the 5882, 1592 of those calls we handled ourselves.
Thank you.
And so those numbers don't necessarily reflect just on sound, that's the overall incoming to the center with all the contracts.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions about communication center report on IT services? And so a quick update from Chris Hill. Chris and his team have been extremely busy, obviously working on the testing for next generation 911 system. things are progressively moving forward in a very positive direction there with primary site being here, completed all the testing and we're about 2/3 to 3/4 completed at Pep Center. And everything seems to be on target. We do have a anticipated launch date for late November, so we're still working very much with our partners to accomplish that.
Any other questions of inspector? Okay, moving on to item number 15. Financial update from chief.
I'm only gonna provide a verbal update, and that's because October is a 3-pay month. So the number of pays falls every 2 weeks. So the number that we reported at the end of September, we had all the September pays in the report that we gave to you last month. So it wouldn't have been accurate to say this was the October report because we still have pay come out fresh. So as soon as we get that number, then we'll provide that next month. But there's really no change from the last.
Moving on to item number 16.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a circumstance and I missed a week and a half.
Details.
So I'll give you 2 months next one.
All right.
On that last week. It was laid up.
All right. Pardon me, moving on to items in new business. Looking at changing the date of the December meeting, it's currently scheduled for Wednesday, December 17th. And someone suggested, could we do it on the Thursday, the 18th?
27th.
17th.
December.
December, yeah, sorry.
Wasn't it
Yeah,
Tuesday, 16th or?
that was Wednesday,
Wednesday's the meeting.
right, but we're suggesting we move it to the Tuesday. Pardon me,
What date would that be again?
it would be the 16th. Yeah.
The 16th is the staff appreciation luncheon.
Yeah, 16th is open.
Would it be?
Well, I don't like to miss that.
Sorry, what was that, Jim?
Staff appreciation for the city is at lunchtime, 11:30. I think it starts till 1. Is there some time in the day we can work that in?
We can start. We can start.
You're 8 o'clock.
7:30, right? What time does the luncheon start?
11:30.
30. Brunch. I'm not sure we'd have that much for December meeting.
As of right now, no.
As of right now.
If we did start at 8, then if we had to go later, maybe we could come back at 1. If it's possible, or even
Right.
just start at 1.
Or do we want to do that? Start at 1 o'clock? How does that work on your schedule? Or you're probably not available, okay. Why don't we split the difference and say 8:30 on the 16th? Because we won't have the all chiefs memos to go through. That'll cut down.
And so that would be canceled with
The 17th.
Yeah. 17th is canceled in favor of Tuesday the 16th.
When is the zone meeting? In December?
There's been nothing scheduled as of yet. Don't think, and then they haven't decided whether they're going to have it virtually or otherwise.
I thought they wanted to meet. Not virtually, they wanted to meet.
In person,
In
yeah,
person.
and I don't think they do.
They did mention that as.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna go to West Perth or something, West Perth, no. You're
Second.
You're on.
You're on, was it? Oh, thank you. You haven't heard if they decided
You haven't-
the exact date?
I haven't yet. I thought they were being towards virtual for December and March still. I haven't heard about it yet.
Yeah, normally they're due because the weather conditions, so.
So 8 AM or 8:30?
I think we're gonna split the different days, 8:30.
You might like it.
They have good coffee.
I'm up 6:30, it's 5:30, so it really doesn't matter to me. I'm just thinking people
Include me
with,
in that.
with
5:30.
children and something like that.
Can you, is 8:30 okay with you?
Oh, yeah, that's fine. They're good.
We never leave here, so it doesn't. 2 AM, I think, and
Just change your shirt and walk in, right?
Yeah, funny but not funny.
All right. So we'll do that then. All right, next item was the fee schedule bylaw. We had actually said we were going to look at that next meeting.
Yes.
That one. Next item was the building comparison review. And you may recall just prior to our last meeting, we received a letter from the city. Which is in response to our letter of April 2025 regarding some of the building maintenance issues that had been completed. This report here compares what we had sent to them in April, what the McIntosh Perry report that was done in June of 2023, and that was your early morning Sunday that you had to come in on, and what the city response was to that letter, not until 23rd of 2025, and where our status summary is right now. So I guess what we're looking at is items from our letter and what the city has responded to what they're going to have been looking after. Some of them haven't been mentioned in the city's letter. Other ones they're looking after them soon. They've given us dates, but they are dates in the future. There is a meeting scheduled for Friday to meet with Tim and Brady. At least, and there may be other people there if you're going to be there. I know counselors on the board here were also copied on that meeting invite. Unfortunately, I can't make that meeting. I'm probably out of town that day.
Where is that meeting and what time?
It's at the city and it's in the boardroom, the basement, lower concourse, so.
Offered to have it here.
I think it was mid-mornings.
It is. Very well.
So it's on, it's the 31st, the Friday.
Yeah, 31st.
Come in
10 AM, and it shows in my calendar as the basement board.
Yeah.
10 till 12:30 potentially.
So if you're going, you
You
may
can
want to.
dress as a police officer. On the 31st.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is costume. yeah.
Halloween
Dress up
day.
for it.
Offered to have it here, so they could do a site tour and actually do this sights and smells, but they chose to not leave it at city.
I wonder why. Anyways, moving along. This report on the road hand column gives you idea or identify what, when and where these actions are actually going to be completed. You may want, the people who are going to attend the meeting, take this report with you. So you have a document to work from, because I'm sure they're going to have a document there. They will be working from that talks about all the different areas that they're working on. I think it boils down to priorities. And I think one of the issues that they may not totally comprehend is the fact that this is a 24/7 operation. So right off the bat, lighting is on 24/7. So if they're running with old style light bulbs, they're running with old,
High efficiency.
yeah. Or not old style, they're new style billing for that electricity cost. And then there's other ones. Some of the plumbing, it wasn't mentioned at all in the city letter, and there's no information provided, so. There are some areas here that either they are looking at rescheduling, or they just haven't got around to it because budget issues. Yes, Mary?
It may be helpful for you to, since you're not going to be there, to identify some of those issues pass them on to the vice chair.
Sure.
Well, I will mention on your chart, the overhead doors, it says listed in the budget, but no progress or details shared. They showed up this week.
Yeah, just finish it off
Did we
today.
know they were coming? No, it's not finished.
Oh, it's not?
It won't be finished because they were replacing the bottom panels of the doors and they ordered the installer had ordered the wrong ones, so we're in a delayed holding pattern, so I'm not sure when they plan on getting the new ones. They didn't match. Okay, so
So when
some
you,
things are done, but some aren't.
the overhead doors are at the back for the,
Yeah,
Sally
for the
port.
Sally port and for the storage garages and things like that, and they did some work and they repaired. There were actually gaps at the bottom and I didn't realize, I talked to the one city person last week, they're cosmetic, they aren't structural. But the bottom inch of the metal plate along the outside of the support around the was gone, so they've taken that and they've cut it back and they put some stainless steel in. Screwed that into the bricks, so it's there. So they've done some work on that. It's not completed yet because of the mistake by the supplier, but it's fun.
Just a point of clarification, you didn't know that.
We knew they were gonna at some point, but I don't know how many. This has been going on since early spring. It's been canceled. The number, I believe they had a contractor issue that. So it's been back and forth a number of times.
We got, did we get a day's notice? Just show up or
We got a little bit of notice.
a little bit?
Yeah, a few days, yeah.
I think certainly, moving, the issue about the communication, I think is an important one between the board and city. And there's wondering how we can enhance or improve that communication process. It's not just about facilities, it's about
General.
activities, because I've heard it in different meetings and we know communication is critical to building relationships and to maintaining efficiency and effectiveness. And I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity to improve that communication? What would it take? How would that move forward? Because people have different impressions on communicating effectively, and I think, has there ever been a discussion about what the board needs from the city and vice versa, what the city needs from the board around communication, timeliness, information that's required? I think we're moving forward and there's no doubt with the stats we just saw, how important with the volume of activity that effective communication is in police services. So that is another one of my questions, Chair.
Well, I
How
think-
do we move this forward to build relationships?
I think the protocol agreement calls for a minimum of 2 meetings a year.
Yes,
I don't think that's enough.
okay,
Also, the venues for those meetings have been top down.
so
They
you mean
haven't
it
been-
comes from the city, but not from the,
Just the venue itself.
okay, all right,
I think what we need to have is a round table or square table discussion. Rather than 10, and I think that would promote more discussion because now there's not room for input from multiple people. You have to stand at a microphone. The chief is standing there and that's fine. But I think there's other people around the table from the board and from staff.
Yeah.
That could have input and provide more clarity on some of the things that are happening at the service. And clear up some of the misconceptions
Yeah.
that council may be having.
and that's exactly what I'm referencing. That's an enhancement of the communication in both function and structure. So as a board, how do we move that forward to make that request?
My suggestion would be that it's the board that invite council to a communication of a round table, so to speak. Maybe at the Bay Shore or somewhere that can address the communication. As opposed to council inviting the police to conduct their protocol.
At the first, yeah.
I think we could certainly beginning, I mean, it's important and
Well, it's a concern of this board
yes,
and the police service.
Yeah.
It's not really a concern of council until we address it with them.
I agree. I agree. And it's time. It's time.
John, is the 2 meetings a year? Is it specified, like, is it the city's meeting then? So we don't have the opportunity to host a meeting,
We don't have an opportunity, we can host a meeting anytime we want,
but it's not part of it.
it's not mandated.
So that's what we have to fix, because there's too many other things that.
Yeah.
I mean, the events thing is a major issue where the city's just, it's not good enough to say, well, they know over there that we have a Santa Claus parade every year at the same time. But you need dates, you need specifics,
Times what you need,
rather than just calling up saying, oh, by the way, we have an event at the art gallery tomorrow, and it's like. Oh, well, we're gonna need 2 extra officers to cover that because there could be trouble and they have no idea when it comes to the operations of this, what the needs are. So if we were hosting a meeting, good point.
Yeah.
Then we can bring up the things that to speak to them.
And I agree that it needs to be in a neutral place. Not here and
Not
not
there.
no, neutral.
Like even the library basement or
Yes.
something.
And start to build those make the relationships stronger. I don't mean build them, they're there, but an enhanced communication. Because the demands of police services are increasing, we see that from the stats. And how can we make it work?
The city has a communication policy with the public, but internally, I don't know how strong their communication policy is.
okay, what I'll do is, I'll come up with a list of items. And I'll share it with everyone who they can add their items to it. And then I'll talk to Tim or somebody in the city to see if we can find a date next few months available for us to have a roundtable discussion.
Maybe consider who you'd like to request to sit around that table. The people that interface primarily who organizes the event. And sometimes
Staffing in the communication department, is that what you're talking about?
yes, because often it's relationships are built by the people who deal directly with each other to communicate the messages. So not just senior leader or not
The
just
events coordinator, that kind of thing.
yes, yes.
Maybe you could suggest to identify who those are, because I have no idea who they are. And are you talking below director level?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So we can do that then. We'll chat about that. Yep. All right. Anything else on the building comparison review? I think we're gonna look at this, identify areas for counselors and we're going to attend and see what happens, right? That's not gonna, I'm not let me rephrase that. I will not be able to get to this between now and Friday, because I'm out of the city as of shortly. So if there's any questions that you have on this, that you're not sure of, I'll direct them to Craig. Yeah, I committed to something and then forgot my calendar, got in the way. All right.
You have a lot too.
Yeah, how about that? Anyways, moving on. Grant update. This was on before we realized that the grant update was also going to be on the meeting that we had with council just on Monday. So it's basically we received money through the Community Safety and Policing Grant for the 2025-2026 fiscal year. And the first allotment under the local priorities funding stream allocates about $230,000 to assist the service in maintaining a part-time officer enhancement initiative that allows for part-time police officers to assist with traffic enforcement and calls during peak volume. Second allotment of about $418,000 under the provincial priorities funding stream will assist with funding our community-oriented response and enforcement team, or CORE as everyone else knows it in here. This grant will provide for a team of 2 officers to be assigned to proactive policing initiatives focused on community safety priorities, and that includes things as a greater visibility in the river district, as well as other areas that are a concern to citizens. I think that's that there. The next item is the public order unit policy. You'll probably notice in the package, there was 2 documents. There was one for the board, and then there was another one for the service policy. That was my mistake. I clicked send and both of them were attached to the email. And told Kayla quite rightly just to post these up, make sure these appear on the agenda. Anyways, so the unit one for the service is just an FYI because it's already been dealt with. But we do need to approve the board policy for the public order units that you saw there. And the highlights in blue are from the new wording that's in the actual CSPA. And the yellow is the recommended changes by Dave that we include in it, and those recommendations come from the ministry. So all that to say, if there's no questions on the public order policy, could I have someone make a motion that we approve as presented?
I'll just comment that right now, our understanding since the new acts come in April 1st last year, that the current agreements remain in place prior to the act. I'll let Hank comment after if that's a possibility, but from our understanding, the current agreements remain in place and our status quo until we see something new, and we're still waiting to see something new. We had something in place with the OPP to cover that off prior to under the old act, but we're operating under the assumption that's still in place now, and then hopefully we'll see something in that so that we're compliant with our procedure.
Couldn't say it better myself, chief.
Okay.
I know that's what I understand as well. The old section 7 agreement, the MOU is back to it.
And then the only thing that you might is any idea when that's gonna get rolled
Couldn't
in.
say it better myself, chief.
Okay.
No, sir, I don't.
Okay.
I would move approval of the recommendations identified in board policy PO 0010 OSPSB public orders unit.
Seconder? All right, thank you. All in favor, carried. Next item I have on the agenda was the new auxiliary members, and I think we talked about that during Dave's report.
Yeah, very briefly, the appointment process for new auxiliary members resides with the board, as does the constables and special constables now with the new act. So we did complete the training and graduated 7 new auxiliary members last Monday. Sorry, my electronics are gone on me, but so the report does have the 7 new members, and I don't know chair that require a motion to appoint or what the process is for that, but I would ask that the board appoint 7 new members who've now completed the training so they can commence their duties as new auxiliary members of the service.
Any other questions? I signed off all of their appointment letters this morning when I came in. So could I have a motion to appoint them? Okay. Yep.
1 second.
Thank you, Marion. All in favor? Thank you. Good. Moving on to item number G, talks about the collision statistics. January 1st to September 30th. Does anyone want
This,
to?
they're fairly self-explanatory. This comes from the collision reporting, accident report services that do our collision reporting. It's a quarterly report. There's nothing unusual. It's information that's valuable and takes all the information from all of the reports that have been taken over those 3 months and puts them in and figures out collision dates, times, locations, significant locations, and then just packages it back to us as part of our agreement with them. This and gets shared with the city, and then they have some information on traffic collision and traffic data.
Any questions on that report as we're going through it?
Not a question on the report, but as we move forward to the next transportation study, is there a representative from the collision center or police services who actually provides the input? Because there are some trending activities here that I think will influence those studies. How does this information get into a transportation study?
To the city. I've sent that to your director of engineering.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good topic to bring up at our roundtable discussion.
Yes, please. Yes, please. It's important that
I-
we connect the
yeah,
dots, right?
I suggest we provide the information, but we're probably experts that should be a part of the table. And
For sure.
I don't believe, I mean, Jeff sat with some of the, like Jeff Clooney prior sat on some of those. Discussions, but I don't know that he was a member of a traffic committee or.
I think it's important to have the content experts there, but when you provide this, I see data. It's the analysis and interpretation of the data and what does it mean when you're talking about transportation. That's a critical element that I think the police services can bring to the table. Because that's the trending that's going to help inform decisions in the future. Thank you.
I do know that at the city, the key person that was processing that data retired and it's not been replaced yet, their process, so.
Was that Peter?
Chris Webb.
Oh, Chris.
Okay.
Okay, next item up is bail compliance and warrant apprehension. I think we just got a report handed out at the beginning of the meeting, and who's going to take it? Margaret's going to with her. Your math was.
Margaret was gonna present it. Some of it was touched on during the original, factors in the depends on policing and things like that, but I think it was important to discuss specifically the bail compliance and warrant apprehension team because it is a grant funded. It was a grant funded position, 2 positions, running through till March next year. $300,000 was received per year, $900,000 over that term. And some of it, especially in the last year, goes towards salaries, and that's for the officers as well as some civilian analysis and civilian analyst work. I think it speaks for itself. The 2 that we've gone up to hire for those positions have made an incredible impact on the community, and courts are great and courts imposing terms are wonderful, but unless there's some follow through or there's some belief out there that if you're on parole or you're on probation or you're under terms of release, that if somebody's actually going to back up and have to follow those terms. And this is our proactive piece to actually make sure that happens. And when, I mean, you can go through the one there, but I think that the common numbers or the effectiveness of the program. When you're looking at the number of individuals who have reoffended while on bail, for first year of the program, 80, the second year, 156. It's still, I mean, I don't know where the third year is going. I'm not sure whether it's going to settle back down or not, but I think that's just briefly active. These individuals, without a proactive type of enforcement like this unit provides, in all likelihood, the vast majority of those would never have been charged and would never have been discovered that they weren't following the terms of their release and reoffending. Some of them would have, obviously, because of a call for service, if they get involved in a call for service, they're involved in another incident, then you're going to, but this is just strictly the bail, the warrant apprehension and bail people dealing with this. The number of enhanced bail plans that were prepared, it didn't exist in 2023, but they've done 15, and I just saw another one this morning. Just those are the serious incidents where, this individual, for whatever that reason may be, is one that should not be getting back out of custody. And so that gets forwarded to the Crown for further information. Number of charges that were laid issued to individuals who are on bail. So you can see that's gone up 133%, 23 to 24 as this program's rolled out. And those are significant number of charges, like over 1,000 charges. These, the people that are on bail. When we talk about the bail system and bail reform, and it's before Parliament now, it's been introduced for discussion. This is the type of thing that everybody's They've said this open, revolving door of the justice system and all those things. This is the door and make sure that it doesn't just keep on going, keep on going. We lay the charges, we really enhance bail packages, we make those arrests. And I think it's important that everybody recognize that, you know, this is a program that at the end of March next year wouldn't be in place and there'd be 1,034 people that be charged for not following the rules. I don't know that the community would accept that. I don't know that with the crime severity and the numbers that you see in those other reports that you've been given this morning, I'm not sure that that's the best way of handling the situation. So I just wanted to highlight the viability of this program and the value that this program offers when it comes down to having a discussion around the bail, the grant money is expiring. Is this something that we can do? So I think that speaks for itself. Certainly some of the case examples that she's put in. You know, a 55-year-old Owen resident charged with several serious criminal offenses, including sexual assault causing bodily harm by choking and forcible confinement against his intimate partner. After being released from custody by the courts, a subsequent police investigation that would probably not have taken place if we didn't have that resource. Indicated he wasn't complying with conditions. Found a warrant for the individual that refers to turn himself in. They evaded police for 3 months. They end up tracking him down and brought him back and brought him before the courts. Then number 2, 31-year-old man requires by law to register as a sex offender for life. You know, they did an awful lot of work to locate that individual and find out why they were, because he wasn't living in his previous address, and this is the proactive things that people expect that police have time, and these are the serious and important ones that need to be followed up on. You know, third one, arrest of 35-year-old male at Canada-wide warrant issued from Hamilton Police. Numerous police investigations throughout 24 and 25. One for an arrest warrant, failing to stop for officers from conducting a ride program, dangerous operation of a vehicle. This is the stuff that these are the most significant incidents that make the news.
You mentioned, go ahead.
So really, this is truly community safety in action initiative. In an education session that I attended, you were there as well. You talked about these services having a role in harm reduction. Is this a strategy related to harm reduction in that it's a safety enforcement aspect for our community?
And not in your typical harm reduction as far as substance abuse, but yes, it's a harm reduction strategy for community safety by having resources specifically dedicated to the most serious individuals and having, you know, the people who who aren't following the rules, who've been released on terms and conditions that they aren't following those terms and conditions. And these are the people that most need to be held accountable for their actions. And you know, I'll take it. The province as you know, they fund a rope squad and repeat
Under parole
enforcement, and you know, and they fund that, and they travel all over the province looking for the worst of the worst, and you know, and they're an available resource to us if we need them. But that is the true meaning of community safety: is when people are breaking the law, you know about it, you do something.
Yeah. Thank you.
And just for some context, so when this unit first started up, there was a folder downstairs in records that the exact number was more than 200 outstanding arrest warrants that were not getting the attention because we do not have the time to go out and round them up. So your chances of getting, if you get pulled over in a traffic stop and there's a warrant out for you, if we run into you at a call, you're going to get arrested. Those ones that are sitting in the folder, some of them have been in there for years. They were just not actioned because there's nobody to hand it to and say, go out and try and round these people up. And then without showing you one of the reports that we usually do, I always pointed out there's that great big stat that was April of 2023, which was all of those arrests, because we finally had people to say, this is your job. And they went out and, you know, the quantity of those were all picked up in relatively short order. But that should be concerning when you know that there's that many people that have outstanding arrest warrants, that absent of that proactive ability to be able to go out and start knocking on doors and do that sort of thing, they can fly under the radar. So
You mentioned it. They arrested somebody on a non-bill compliance. The Crown was notified. And what's the purpose of notifying the Crown?
So that was the one statistic where they weren't, that the program wasn't in place in 2023. It is now. So that's an enhanced bail package where we go and we work more closely with the Crown to say, you know, whether this person should be released or not. And then as well, they work on sureties and making sure, so our officers will go and work with the Crown and have the discussions, and they'll say, this is the proposed surety, is that person of a good choice for them to monitor them when they're released. And or to put up money for that. And a lot of times the sureties aren't any better than the individuals that have been, you know, that are being brought before the courts. They may have had multiple experiences that they haven't. So it's a process where it does a lot more background, a lot more checks before we just release.
Because when I look at this case example number one, like he was already charged with criminal offenses, sexual assault causing choking and forcible confinement against his partner. And then JP released him on bail.
With the surety likely.
Probably.
Yes,
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's that
that's,
would be considered commonplace
yeah.
in the current climate.
and what is sort of the requirements or around surety right now?
It's case dependent on someone's previous record, convictions, the allegations before the court.
Like, is it a dollar?
Ability
fine?
A lot of times, depending on the severity, they'll seek different levels of intervention.
So what's the
A lot
high?
a lot of times there will be a bail cash deposit, and well, there'll be a promissory amount, but they don't actually take a cash deposit on that. So you can easily sign that you'll put this forward if they breach, and then if you know they're breaching, you call in and say, I want to withdraw my surety because they're not following the terms and conditions, and then they won't lose their deposit either if they call in and do that. So this all falls to the discussion presently before Parliament about bail reform and reverse onus on violent crimes, and you know, all of those things that that's a total review of the process.
Okay, any other questions from anyone? Enlightened, unfortunately. So moving on to the next item that you, Carol, would wanted to add inside this, right? And so, and I think we talked about this at our last meeting. We added to the agenda.
Yes. At the last meeting, we clarified the transportation bylaw is in place, and we certainly are not the barrier to rideshare
right.
in our city at all. It's there, you know, it's a service that is utilized and could be utilized more. What has come forward, and the board did hear a presentation by a company that they were reluctant to negotiate with all municipalities individually because in its individual agreements, but wondered whether there could be advocacy for the promise to set provincial standards around contracts, insurance coverage, safety for the riders, so that rideshare initiatives follow the same guidelines. And this was suggested not just for a business strategy, but for them, but more importantly, to ensure our public are protected and safe by standardized regulations, rules, expectations around insurance coverage. So I'm wondering whether this board wishes to consider the option of requesting some sort of provincial regulations or standards around you know, rideshare for public safety, and so that, and it also will allow those businesses who might be interested then to follow one set of standards, guidelines, rather than negotiating in different municipalities. We've heard from the public, they want to be able to have various choices of transportation available throughout different times. That, and certainly from a city's perspective, we offer transit, but it doesn't always offer it in the timeframes that others might require. So this this may offer an opportunity to enhance the choices for the public and the availability around transit or transportation through different mechanisms.
What? Go
Do
ahead,
we,
Mary.
do we have an example from another municipality? Do we have something on our council agenda from another municipality at all? Requesting the same thing.
I think that the company has requested this.
They've made a suggestion.
Yes, correct. But I'm, it's just, and when we discussed it, the request was, well, could the board send an advocacy letter to the government to consider standardized regulations around rideshare? Because if you have a company that doesn't want to negotiate with each municipality, and there are 444 of us, then in a way it limits the ability for the public to have selection and choice.
I remember when we talked about it last time, was what do we give up if that happens? And I'm thinking from a point of view is, would they come out with not requiring a minimum insurance amounts? Would they require vehicles not being registered, not being
The
licensed?
province, you mean?
Yeah.
I think it's important that those concerns around public safety need to be, perhaps if the board decides to send a request or an advocacy letter, how important those factors are in any sort of regulation that might be considered.
The other thing too is that in this area, we don't have 100% cell phone coverage. And this was brought up by Uber, saying that we can't send a car to that address because there's no cell service, or can't track what it's going, we can't track when it's coming back. So, and I'm not sure why we're gonna look at doing something for West Huron, for example.
Well, when I say municipality, I'm just talking about.
Right. Sorry, Mary.
I just wanted to identify what's in our taxi bylaw and what may result out of this if you, like, we already have a taxi bylaw which includes rideshare program,
Mhm.
correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
And we have regulations in place for our municipality and the safety of our municipality. So it's up to the commercial entity to buy into that or not.
Yeah, and we already have 2 ride shares
Mhm.
in the city right now.
Yeah. And the presentation we had received was that the concern was that the standardization of approach across all was one concern, and that's where provincial regulation would standardize so that whatever was offered would have to follow those guidelines. And also the availability of rideshare, at certain times. Is there an advantage in asking the province for a regulation framework or guideline that would protect our public, but also ensure that people who are looking for this service have it? I think it's great we have it available. We're hearing from the public always there's a request for more.
But the
More
reason why
service.
they don't have it, it's not the regulations that are a barrier,
No,
it's the business model.
it is.
Craig, you
Yeah.
So, and that's why I asked board chair about bringing them in to speak this board, because we manage transportation, the private transportation bylaw. Most communities, the police services board doesn't manage that. It's managed by bylaw because it's a city bylaw. So, it's just historically resided here. But really, this is my thoughts are is that it resides here. We have a bylaw in place that works. If there's advocacy that should be done to promote an equal playing field and to enhance services to the city or all municipalities, that's advocacy that should be done by the city through their proper channels, being AMO or Roma or whoever that is, because that's who really benefits from this is those member municipalities. We have ourselves covered. We've done our job. I agree it could be better, but if you want to come in, there's a place, then there's a format and you can come and do that here. a lot of municipalities don't have that, but they need, and that's where you need some standardization and the right format for this. My thoughts, it's up to you folks, but my thoughts are it goes through the people who it benefits, and that's yours. You're as a city representative, as the city, it's all the communities, then that should go through there.
And that's where the communication back and forth, because the expectation that it resides in these services, then it. Agree. I hear you shaking your head. But it's the expectations, really, in the role of advocacy, whose role is it actually? And that's that disconnect for sure. I think what I'm hearing is that this may not be the forum. I was asked to bring it forward for a conversation, but I'm hearing that maybe this is not the forum for it. I think ultimately, we want the service, our public wants the service. We're asked, why isn't, and I'm not promoting one, but Uber or Lyft here? And the reason is because of that negotiation from our provincial. So it's not us, it's not police services, it's not the city who's saying, no.
I disagree with that comment. The
Saying,
reason that Uber and Lyft are not here
yeah,
is there was no business case for them to be here.
and they say they don't want to negotiate with all the different municipalities. So
Really?
again, we're getting
Yeah.
we're getting mixed messaging from them, the public and the expectation. I don't disagree with you. You've got to have business to survive.
And if you go to Penetang in Midland, there is no Uber in Midland, but there is in Penetang. And the reason there isn't one in Midland, because there's no business case for it. That's why they don't want to expand out to that.
So when you say
They
business,
don't have drivers.
drivers are volume of calls.
Oh,
Gotcha. So I wanted to put it out on the
yeah,
table.
okay.
And I think it's important that this is where the difference between sometimes when police service board handles and bylaw handles, sometimes it's where does it really land? And also when the public wants a service and assumes that we're the barrier, it's clear we're not the barrier. The transportation bylaw is already there, allows it. We have two in place. So if we're asked about Uber or Lyft, that's a business choice by those particular companies. Yeah. That's what I'm hearing you say. Is that
Yes,
right, Chair?
yes, sure.
I don't want to belabor this, but if that was a topic of our joint meeting, possibly, if the city did wish to advocate, I'm sure that this board may support what they're advocating for, but identifying that we have our own rules in place and we are covered.
Yeah. I appreciate the conversation. We've clarified that for sure.
So I think right now, the clarification is it for any letters of support or anything like that would come from municipality.
They're the ones that directed that the service come to the police services, or the bylaw be regulated by police services.
I don't think it's police service business to advocate for a private company.
No, advocate to the province for standardization of regulations that protect our public would be the advocacy. I agree, we're not here to support any one business over another, but certainly I hear them. I hear and understand the message.
Okay. All right. Any more discussion on that? So at this point in time, we'll just leave that to go to the city.
Yeah, I think it would be a conversation at the communication table if there's ever one. Yeah.
If I can just say, I think the message out of this is the interpretation of the advocacy request. It's coming from a commercial entity. It's not coming from other municipalities to lobby the province. So I just think we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think that, again, the main advocacy is standardization of approach that the public,
The
It's
immediate.
Yeah, and
question-
that's AMO and Roma and all of that advocacy role.
The immediate question is, what's wrong with it now?
I don't, that wasn't.
Yeah.
I don't think
We don't know what's wrong. We don't know
No.
what we're fixing.
what, I think the public perception is that there is a barrier to letting companies in, and clearly there is not a barrier from our perspective, from the city's perspective. And I think it's important that that messaging is there. We're not here to advocate for one business over another. We have two in place. It's more around the issue of meeting the public need for accessible, available, appropriate transit and transportation without an increased demand on our city budget to increase transit funding for additional buses. And that's where it works together. You know, the ride sharing and the taxi services that we have as well. And transit, that all together, it has to work together. Because budgets are limited everywhere. Yeah,
But again, it's a consumer choice.
yes, agreed.
Great, yeah.
No,
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Okay, I think having completed all the items on the agenda, we'll terminate the meeting at 12.